Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. I'm your host, Jen Taylor. A huge shout out and thank you to NGBN TV for sponsoring this video podcast episode. In today's episode, we hear from Erin Keam, a woman from New Zealand, now in Seattle. She grew up with a then undiagnosed bipolar disorder. She was always trying to avoid depression, compulsion, and had a chaotic work experience. She realized after her diagnosis that she loved and had been involved in fashion and launched an amazing style branding business that ignites her passion, and she found love at the age of 48. Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. Today I have Erin Keam, and Erin Keam happens to be one of my favorite people ever. My sister from another mister. I love you. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. You know what? Getting ready for this podcast was the easiest I've ever done. For one thing, I didn't rehearse anything. I didn't prepare anything. I knew all I had to do was just show up and respond in the moment to, as, you know, depending on how I was feeling. And I didn't have to get dressed. I mean, I'm a stylist, right? I'm a style consultant. I'm an image consultant. I'm a brand consultant. All I had to do was get undressed. So
that's my favorite part.
I mean, the only thing I've got on is a necklace and the heater. And if I have to fiddle with the heater, I'll let you know, because I get hot and cold.
Yeah,
welcome to being 50, you know, 52, welcome.
Yep.
And you're one of my favorite people. You're one of my favorite clients. I had the honor and privilege of working with you, which is going to sound crazy because you are the Naked Podcaster. And yet I've been helping you with clothing.
Yeah, or lack thereof, or ideas around you, and you know, you showed up naked, and you are the happywardrobe.com. And you live in Seattle, correct?
I do. I'm from New Zealand. I moved to America full-time. I say full-time as in I officially moved all my stuff over June of 14th. So what I brought with me was a couple of paintings, 2 really full suitcases, and a few boxes. And I've been here ever since. And I'm very much hoping I'll get approval for citizenship.
Yay!
That would also be an honor and a privilege.
Oh, how great. I know it's hard to get citizenship or dual residency in New Zealand, so that's a tough one.
Apparently a lot of people want to move there at the moment, so.
You know, I remember having this conversation probably 10 years ago. I was working for a woman who, she and her husband were applying for it. And even with the acceptance and the work you go through in getting dual residency, you're still only allowed to stay at like 3 months at a time, twice a year. I mean, it's very specific. So even pre-pandemic, it was a pain I can't even imagine. Let's jump in and talk about the happywardrobe.com. And yes, I am a client, even though I'm naked. And God, I love your website. But I love what you do, and that's why I hired you to do it. So jump in and let's talk everything about the Happy Wardrobe.
Thank you for the opportunity. I am Erin Keam from thehappywardrobe.com, and I hope you can hear me. I want American teeth, so I've got aligners in, so I'm practicing with them, and it actually feels more weird when I don't have them in. So this is me for the next 18 to 24 months. So I have a background in self-development, recovery, sales, marketing, customer service, customer facing, analyzing customer research, and getting dressed. I mean, I have loved clothes for, you know, over half a century. And I was in Hawaii, which is one of my happy places, and it was a tropical rainstorm. It was thundering down outside. I still remember it was one of the best holidays I had because all my husband and I could do was eat, sleep, read, and we really needed the break, him especially. And I kind of sat up and went, you know, the eureka moment, because I realized I could combine everything from my experience as a realtor I mean, I've had a variety of careers, because every time I've been interested in something, I've found out about it. I've been curious. I've always had curiosity. And I thought, oh my God, I can completely and utterly combine my love of clothing with the psychology awareness I have, with the tools that I have for helping people transform, helping them erase old patterns, helping them move forward with their lives towards their goals, with my ability as the customer experience and actually attracting clients and sales and marketing. And the Happy Wardrobe was born.
Yeah, and it's so fantastic. So on your work with me page, first of all, you do a free 30-minute consultation. So
Hmm.
anyone can get that free consultation. And then you have the style statement or the Happy Wardrobe method, which is the one that I did. It was the much more in-depth. And I was super excited about doing this with you, but I am a minimalist, so I don't have a big closet. So that was easier to go through, right? But also I thought I had myself pretty dialed in, and that was not true. So, I mean, even when you feel like you pretty much got it all together, I didn't realize what I was lacking, and the things that I felt hesitancy about in my wardrobe, I just let go. You were like, why are you keeping it? And I'm like, and it was gone. So it did actually a tremendous amount for me. And I have my list of things that I'm starting to get now. Um, it was huge, and it was like 2-3 hour sessions. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like, we're never going to go through 2-3. Oh my gosh, we could have done like 2 5-hour sessions probably. It was nuts. It was so in depth. So take us through the two different programs, because obviously I only know about one, and I did the big one. I would highly recommend that. But take us through the differences in what you do.
So I always recommend we start off with a cue to call. If you're at a stage where you want to move forward with your life and you know that style will help you get there, maybe you need to up level, maybe you're relaunching, maybe you're pivoting. I work a lot with women entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, which can be very lonely with all the emotional ups and downs. And we forget to be objective, and we're so busy growing our business, we don't realize how much our style, our background, our image impacts our ability to attract clients and earn money. I want all women to make a shitload of money, and your style is a step towards that. So I always start off with a discovery call to clarify if I can be of service, and if not, I'll point you in another direction, and I'll send you away with a couple of action steps immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's as far as we go, that is wonderful. Really, really glad to have connected. I love women, love talking to women. If we decide to move forward, the next step is I always start with the style statement. And I'm going to be phasing that out in the terms of that I'm not going to offer that as a standalone anymore, because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do my clients justice. What it does is it's an in-depth dive to your unique style. And we explore beloved items. I don't even look at clothes. You know, you've been through this. I will take you around your environment, your home environment. We will
Mm-hmm.
discuss shared experiences, memories, and feelings you have about items in your home. And from that, I find the patterns and the themes that you're probably not able to see, because, you know, it's like when we look in the mirror, we just can't be objective. When a friend goes shopping with us, they can't be objective.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
able, as a, what do they call it, as a deep listener, to feed you back the themes and the patterns I saw. Oh, this is so funny. I feel like I've got like a lisp. And then after that, what we do is we create an umbrella style statement. And that style statement is completely unique to you. And you can
Yep.
take that to your wardrobe, your home, your business. I've had clients redecorate their homes. I've had clients change their website name. I've had clients overhaul their website. I've had clients overhaul their wardrobe. I've had clients overhaul their relationships. And the statements are unique to you, and they mean something to you. If you said them to somebody else, they'd be like, huh? Like
Mm-hmm.
highly accomplished fairy godmother, inspirational badass, artisan mermaid, simplicity and story. But to the person whose style statement it is, they deeply, deeply resonate, and they know what they mean. And because I've spent the 90 minutes with them, or up to 2 hours with them, I know them so well that when we do
Mm-hmm.
go to their wardrobe, we can both look at the wardrobe and they can see through my eyes, and
Yeah.
they can hold the concept up against their wardrobe and go, that's not me. That is me. That's not me. That's not me, because they have clarity, such a clear vision. And then I teach my women clients how to be their own stylist. You and I still have some steps to go on that, which I'm looking forward to. But I will take my clients through a step-by-step process so they can become their own stylists, which makes it quick and easy to get dressed. How to create their own boutique, how to combine combinations, what colors go with what the color of their skin tone is, what they need in order to complete a wardrobe. If they want a capsule wardrobe, what ideal life do they want? What's the wardrobe for that ideal life? What clothing obstacles are standing between them and their ideal business? And step by step, until I was with a client yesterday and she said, I don't know what to look for. And I said, but you will.
Yeah.
So what I did was I went on Nordstrom Rack, just as an example.
Okay.
I hearted and put in her cart multiple items. And I said,
Okay.
tomorrow, this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to take her through and explain why I chose those items. Show her the patterns, show her what to look for. Then she won't need me. She'll be able to shop without me. I want to set my clients free,
Right.
like little style birds.
I actually loved that. When we went through, you had some suggestions that I would have never thought of. You had some suggestions, like when you looked at my wardrobe and my home as a whole, you were like, you don't have a burgundy pencil skirt. I just turned my heat up too, and my chair keeps hitting
You
my.
knew what I was doing.
I
And the
just
thing is,
happened.
sorry to
Yeah.
overtalk, but burgundy looks great on you. It's a color you really love. You've got legs for days. I mean, those of you who can't see Jen, her legs come up to here.
I have a 33-inch inseam. Yeah.
You
So
have the most stunning. I mean, all women are beautiful, but your legs come to here.
right,
I'm
right, right.
5'2", so I'm not exaggerating. And a pencil skirt would look amazing on you, especially when you're on stage, and you didn't have hardly anything in burgundy.
Right. And so you recommended things like that. And then I remember you were like, you literally own 2 pairs of jeans. What's the matter with you? And I didn't have white jeans of any kind or shorts. And it's something that I always wanted, that I was a little nervous about. And you were like, you need to do that. Right. And so there were things that I was always kind of drawn to, but a little uncomfortable with because I wasn't sure. And that was done. And then there were things that you were like, you have these massive gaps. You need to get rid of this stuff. And you have these massive gaps. And when I was like, oh, that's true. I do. And so I would have never, it definitely took, that unbiased look at the outside, our conversation about my favorite painting in my living room. Like that was connected, and I would have never connected that part. So for people who are like, what? Just go with it. Just go with it. It's going to make sense. Just go with it. And
I should put that on my website.
just go with it. Just go with it. It's like, why does that painting, and I told you we wanted to replace our living room furniture, and I have a much more clear idea of what that looks like for my style statement. Like, I wasn't expecting any help with my couch, but I was like, I know we're moving. I know we're buying a house. I'm not buying living room furniture, so I know what the living room looks like, but I know we're going to redo this. And it was so interesting how that was dialed in so beautifully. After we talked about my burgundy skirt, you helped me with my couch. Like, just go with it, people. That's all I'm telling you.
This is the best testimonial ever.
I know. I looked at the testimonials on your website. I need to get one on there. So, but it's true. You're looking at not the shirts that I have. That wasn't even our first meeting. Our first meeting was all about the house and coming up with, what were the words that described my style. And after that, we looked at clothes. I mean, that was so great. It was just so great and so unexpected and so much more in depth.
Thank you. The challenge, a lot of people will, some people will go to something like a box that arrives with clothing for you, and that's great. Or you can get a shopper who'll go shopping for you, and I do make that. I do that as part of my process. But unless you really understand your client, I have the joy of getting to really know my clients. So I can find something when I'm out and about and go, that's Jen, or that's
Uh,
Clara, or that's Michelle, or that's Melissa, because I know them and their lifestyles
yeah,
so well.
yeah, yeah. Well, so I got married recently. Uh,
Woo!
I know. We're recording on October 2nd, and I got married September 19th. And this necklace arrived from you for my wedding, and it hasn't come off since because I loved it. Aside, I'll only buy things, or I only want things. Things are in my cart that I not for that one event. I mean, there's a couple dresses, that I have for very specific whatever, and my Chanel shoes, for example, that are not every day all the time, but for the most part, 99% of my wardrobe, yes, I can use it for that event, but I can also use it because that's my mentality. And so that was my wedding present from you.
Congratulations. The wedding photos were beautiful, and the story behind your wedding made me cry. It was so special.
Also, I was sending you, this is aside from the style statement, the whole process we went through, you're very available to your clients afterwards. And this is so great because usually I don't have coaching with the person that I have on my podcast where I can really express to other people what it's like. But in this case, I've gone through your whole process for the most part. You're very available. So I was messaging you wedding dress and shoe pictures. Through the whole process. And because we had done this with my normal everyday life, it was so much easier for me to know exactly what I was looking for a special occasion. So that was really, I know I'm just talking you up. Just hire
I
her.
I love it. That is a wonderful validation, and you're right, because we'd honed in so clearly. I mean, I was thinking, this woman's doing my job for me. You were like, I found the dress, I found the shoes, this is the necklace I want. And I was like, either she doesn't need me, or I've done my job really,
Yes.
really well. Go free grasshopper. I've obviously done something right here, because that's just it. I want to teach you. What is that whole teach a woman to fish?
Yeah, exactly. And she feeds herself for life, right? It is that
Exactly.
same thing. No, there were several times where you were like, no, don't go in that direction. So it's not like I just nailed it out of the gate. But I had a much, well, with the wedding dress, that was actually pretty okay. But there have been other things. I'm like, what are your thoughts on? You're like, absolutely not. Like, I can't even get it out of my mouth before you're like, do not, do not go that direction. I think one time you were like, you're not 20 and you don't live in sweatpants. And I was like, okay, point taken. So there you go. Like,
You have the legs of a
yeah.
20-year-old, but and I do have the old Sesame Street t-shirt, but I have a
Right.
client right now who is only 52, which sounds ancient, I'm sure, to your children, but she's dressing like a 70-year-old. And
Um,
we need to readjust that because she needs to be dressing for the age she is. And then she had a
yeah.
couple of pieces where I was like, no, take those back to Supre. That is, I mean, sorry, you don't have Supre, you have Forever 21.
Oh,
I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
take those back to Forever 21.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so that is awesome. And people have to understand, like, it'll change your sheets and your couch, not just your wardrobe, but also you give great suggestions to people. Like you gave me several suggestions about public speaking, which I was looking at what my style was and how I should show up, but you went way outside of the box because you found out I had a guitar, but I hadn't had guitar lessons. And you're like, oh, you should be playing your guitar on stage naked with the guitar covering you when you public speak. And I was like, wow, that was unexpected. So you really plant a lot of seeds also. Um, yeah, as far as that goes. So just be prepared when you hire Erin that you're going to be taken on this wild ride of many different options.
You'll also get your Zoom background reviewed whether you want it or not. And you'll probably end up with me interfering with your dating photos and your website. One
Perfect.
client, I went through all her YouTube videos, and we talked about, where her mannerisms, and where I also have a theatre background, so
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
joys of 35 different careers. Thank you so much for the kind things you have said. I would also like to point out you have an incredible singing voice. So if you haven't
Oh.
followed that up, I realize you've been busy getting married. I want you to call me next week and tell me you've booked in some studio time, okay?
Yes, see, I'm telling you. Aaron's gonna get all up in your business. So I want people to check out the happywardrobe.com and everything you do because it's so much bigger than what you think it's going to be. And now I want to jump in and go back in time.
Oh,
You already mentioned that you were born in New Zealand. And so and that you're 52. So were you born in 68?
67. I'm
Okay.
53 this year.
Okay. So I turned 50 this year. So when's your birthday?
October. You are so much younger than I am.
Oh, so much. Yeah. Okay. So you were born in 67 in New Zealand. So that's what we can start there.
Yeah, I was talking to a younger friend of mine the other day who was talking about some of the misinformation around COVID, and she mentioned AIDS and some of the misinformation around AIDS,
Mm.
and it pushed a button for me because she's 30 something, and she doesn't remember what it was like for people who were gay in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that experience, but my first, when I went flatting for the first time, which is New Zealand, is when you move out of home, and I moved out of home at 18 because I wanted to move out as soon as I could. My first flatmates were gay, and it was a very different world in the late 80s to
Right.
be a gay man or woman, especially in Auckland. Auckland thinks of itself as being a big city, but of
Okay.
course it's tiny compared to other cities around the world. It's the largest city in New Zealand. We have around 4 million people now. Don't quote me on that, I'm not up to date. And most of them do tend to live in Auckland. I haven't lived there for a little while, as you know, but this is apropos of nothing. But growing up being born in the 60s, growing up in the 70s, being a teenager in the 80s, which was a huge amount of fun, by the way, and then experiencing it's a different experience than it is
Mhm.
being, for people who are going through COVID now. I have a very sheltered view of COVID, which is what's happening right now. I have a very sheltered view of what's going on with politics and awareness and Black Lives Matter because I wasn't born here. I didn't grow up here. I have the privilege of being married to a man who has two daughters who are adults, and I was explaining to one that I can't see things through her eyes. I was not born here. I didn't grow up here. New Zealand is a completely different experience. I can only share my own experience, strength, and hope. So that's apropos of nothing, but that's just something that came up the other day. A lot of my friends were gay. I had friends that were in the sex industry, and uh, so as opposed, so yeah, I have perhaps different experiences that she has. Again, that's going completely off topic. So I was brought up in the suburbs, in a suburb called Glenfield, which was one of those nappy valleys, which means that it was a new development where it was full of parents with small children. Lots of bush around, which I guess you call forest. So, the section next door was empty. I love being alone. I'm an introvert, so I'd wander down and sit under a tree or sit by a stream and just think and be. It felt like our house was crowded and noisy. We had a small house, and my grandmother lived with us, and there was three of us children and my parents, and it was small, and it felt overwhelming. I didn't feel like I had any privacy or any space, for a variety of reasons. So I'd go sit on the roof. It was where I would just get some time alone, or I'd go and wander down the bush and just sit in the bush, which is probably not the best thing for a small girl to do these days. I was told I was oversensitive, highly strung, over emotional. In reality, I was trying to process what was going around me, which was it was a very chaotic situation. I was highly intelligent, which doesn't always help because I could read. When you grow up in a chaotic environment, you become very adept, or I became very adept at reading micro expressions. And
Mm.
reacting, and my first thought was always, how do I control the situation to avoid repercussions? How do I please people? How do I entertain them? How do I distract them? How do I keep them smiling? How do I manipulate in a way that keeps me approved of? Because approval was very important. The message I internalized was that other people's feelings were more important than mine, that I needed to be accepted, approved, that I need to be damped down, that I needed to be managed, that and I remember for years, people would say things like, just be yourself. And it was like, well, which one? Now I know now I understand that as to respond authentically as I am in this moment. And that's all I can do, is just, and I try and respond instead of react. They wanted to put me ahead in school. My dad said no, he wanted me to have peers my own age.
Okay.
But being a highly intelligent and hyper-aware little girl, anxiety, I remember being very anxious. When I was about 13, that was the first time I remember really wanting to die. Looking
Wow,
back,
that's
it was
so young.
probably because I felt so powerless. It's part of the reason I was so crazy about superheroes, because to me they symbolize people with power. Female superheroes. I mean, my role models were Charlie's Angels and Wonder Woman. Remember, this is New Zealand. We only had 2 channels, and no VHS was a very big deal when that came out. I remember when we went to color television.
Yeah.
So we had very limited
Yeah.
viewing. So Fantasy Island, magic, superheroes. To me, these were people that had agency. They had power, because I didn't see it in my life at all. I had no examples of that. So that's probably why I was so into my comics. It was also escapism. I could always be found with my head in a book. I never was fond of reality. I always liked fantasy and magic, and I clung to that for a very long time. At 13, I remember sitting in a tree and just wanting to die, simply because I didn't want to be there and I had no other choices. It felt like that was the only option I had. As a child, you don't have a lot of agency, and I was brought up in a way where, in order for my family to function, there was a great deal of control. And there was also a great deal of screaming and yelling, and you never knew when it was going to happen, and you never knew what would trigger it, and you never knew what would cause it. So it was kind of like being on a minefield, because behavior one day would be approved of, and the same behavior the next day wouldn't be. So it was constantly tiptoeing around and checking. There was no emotional stability. There was no external emotional compass. My internal compass was broken, because I was told that what I believed and felt was wrong. So what also happened, there's that useful word, so, was, looking back on it, my first psychiatrist said that that's probably when my bipolar was triggered.
When you were 13 and you're
Yeah,
massively hormonal and you're
and
suicidal.
and stressful. She
Yeah.
said that had I been brought up in a different environment, this is no reflection on my environment. I have siblings who had completely different experiences. Another child in that family, another child would have had a completely different experience. I can only see through my eyes.
Yeah.
And I remember going with another family member to a therapy session, and that person saying, no, that's not how it happened at all. And the therapist saying, what you have to understand is that that's how she interpreted it. That's her truth.
Right.
And to be honest, my truth was pretty onto it. So I was undiagnosed bipolar, which made being a teenager pretty challenging. Again, I was highly smart, highly intelligent, so I was in all the what you call advanced placement classes. I wrote the school musical in 3 weeks, which was produced. I was always creative. I was always writing. I was writing since I was a little girl, but there was no role models for that. There was no mentors. I didn't see that happening in real life. I didn't click that the people who wrote those TV shows were writers, that was something I could do. I didn't click that I could write books. There was no, because I don't think I had the ability to put things into context, and I couldn't see anybody. I just knew I loved to write. And I mainly loved to write fiction, because that was my happy place.
Yeah.
So school was incredibly erratic. I'd get incredibly high marks in some subjects and incredibly low marks in others, because I would try anything, and I was never any good at being consistent. I just couldn't be consistent. And depression, obviously, trying to keep one step ahead of depression, which is probably also that's part of the reason I think I kept getting told I was over the top and over emotional. But you try being a bipolar teenager who's undiagnosed.
Yeah.
Since I didn't get diagnosed until I was 35, and it was such a huge relief. It explained so much. I'd had really bad depression, and apparently that's common in women and common in the mild version, whatever the mild version is. I think it's 2. I have the mild version of bipolar, but apparently that's very common in women. We tend to go down more than up. I was never like some of my friends who had extreme mania.
Okay.
I mean, I never thought I could fly or commune with aliens, but I did have grandiosity at times, which there was talents and abilities to back a lot of that up, but I had absolutely no structure
Yeah.
whatsoever. So fast forward to try and deal with my chaotic emotions and feelings. I changed jobs, I changed hair colors, I changed countries, I changed relationships. I kept thinking I could, you know what they say, no matter where you go, you take your baggage with you.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately, yes.
I just kept, I had hope. I never gave up on hope. And I thought if I could just find the right combination, it would all fall into place. I self-medicated. I made a lot of disastrous choices. I put myself in very dangerous situations. I had very distorted thinking around money and sex. I was slut shamed. Um, I did not have the ability to say no. It's not that I never said no and that was overridden. It was that I did not feel I had the right to say no. And I also had some very bizarre thoughts around about sexuality. I had internalized some religious messaging. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is my interpretation. I'm 100% believe in a higher power. I 100% believe in the great mystery and the divine, completely and utterly. And I have good memories of the religion that I was exposed to. But I internalized messages that made me that meant I was a terrible, terrible person, which was part of the reason that in 1990, I know I'd always flirted with the idea as a backup. You know, it was always the last resort. But in 1990, I went down to a doctor, explained that I desperately wanted to hurt myself, and I was hospitalized. And this is in England. I was in London at the time. And the
Okay.
only reason I didn't, hold on, one moment, please, caller. The heater needs to go down. Commercial break. The only
um,
reason, sorry,
no, go.
I
The only
was going to
reason you
say the
weren't
only
hospitalized.
reason I didn't, and this is what got me to a doctor, was my sister. My sister is my favorite person in the world. She's my touchstone. She's my lodestone. She is, I mean, I'm going to start crying if I think about her. Not putting responsibility on you, sister. You're not responsible in any way for me whatsoever, but she's my person. And I adore my husband, completely and utterly adore my husband. He's got my back. We are a team. We
Mm-hmm.
are, we are so good together. And that's another story. But my sister, she was only 14 at the time. And I thought, I can't do this to her.
Ah, yeah.
Other people had suicided. I knew of other suicides, and I knew what happened to the people left behind. And she had her own stuff to deal with, and I thought, I am not doing this to her. And what
Wow.
really scared me was the point when I thought she'd be better off without me. And I thought, oh boy, you need to get your ass and get some help now. So I was hospitalized in a wonderful hospital, and got some great help, and went back to New Zealand and got some better help, and had a therapist for the first time, and had several more years of chaos. And then around 23 years ago, I found peer facilitated recovery groups, of which I won't say the names
Okay.
because they're anonymous for a reason.
All right.
But I haven't had any alcohol or anything like that for 23 years.
Wow, that is so, congratulations. That is really, really outstanding.
It's not because I didn't. I said I do it to save my. I did it to save my life,
Yeah,
and it
well,
wasn't me. And it wasn't me that did it. It was something bigger than me that did it. But I hope it can. If I can do it, anybody can, right?
I mean, yes, because anybody can, but also what a great um, example you are to people who are on the other side of that, or just starting, or, you know, new into it. And good for you at like 23 years old for recognizing the aftermath of suicide. I don't think my stepmom committed suicide, and I found my neighbor after he'd shot himself in the head. So I'm very familiar with suicide, right? But it's very selfish. And I have a hard time saying that because I've lost people very close to me. But because if you have any idea the aftermath of what you leave behind, you would never want to put other people through it. And I understand suicidal thoughts and feeling like there is no other way out.
Mm-hmm.
But you at 23 took a moment, a breath to say, I don't want to leave the aftermath for everyone else.
My sister,
And
yeah. The thing
and
is,
your
the
sister,
person. Sorry, I'm over talking,
it's
but
incredible.
thank you. I never thought of it like that, but in
Yeah.
my mind, and I have only my perception.
Mhm.
I believe that some people who were suicide held on as long as they could.
Yep.
Right? They did
Yep.
what they could. They absolutely did what they could. But I believe that if I was dead, I'd be fine. Totally and utterly fine. I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't have any, I have no issues around dropping dead whatsoever. I
Right.
know I'd be fine. But the people around me,
Yep.
wow, it's why I am a bit of a minimalist. It's why I keep my affairs in order. It's why I have things ready. I'm not a fatalist, but
Right.
make it easy on the people left behind.
I'm very huge about that. I also think there's a control element somewhere in there. I know there is for me. There's so little in the world I can control, but I
Mm,
can have a will and have a trust set up, and I can do that much. At some point, we're all going to die. So it's not even being a fatalist. There's no fear in that for me either. But I want to know that when it's my time to go, I've set things up for the people I've left behind to make that part of it as easy as I can so that they can focus on the fact that there will be grief involved and sadness, and they can just focus on that. So
mm.
yeah, for me, I just think it's so easy to control how we leave things, even if we can't when or why or any of that. So
And the thing is, when I was 23, I thought I'd hit a bottom and I hadn't.
mm,
I met somebody in the hospital who had a very similar story to mine, especially
okay,
around the shame, because I felt like I was a terrible human being. I was convinced I was a terrible human being. I was convinced I didn't deserve to live. I had so much shame over choices I'd made. And she had the same story. And for the first time, this is before peer recovery, before any kind of therapy, I saw this beautiful, beautiful woman, this young girl who didn't deserve to die. And that was like looking in a mirror. And that I will always remember as the first the first sign of healing. That wasn't my bottom. I hadn't been diagnosed as bipolar. The depressions were extreme. There was still a lot of chaos to go through until I became clean and sober at 31. And again, I didn't get diagnosed till 35. So there was a
right.
lot of chaos. I feel that it took until my 40s before my life started to stabilize. And when I meet young people now, or younger people, or anybody younger than me, I meet beautiful young people. I've got several semi-nieces, there's a lot of young people in my life, especially women. And if I spot the signs, I say, get diagnosed now.
Yeah.
Save yourself decades. Find out now. Seek help now.
And when you were hospitalized, that wasn't something that came up in that process, like a diagnosis of depression or bipolar.
They didn't click as to the bipolar. Nobody clicked as to the bipolar until I was 35.
Okay.
And I'm also really grateful because they gave me an IQ test around then, and I still
Mm.
was okay, because I'd abused my body and my mind and everything in so many ways. That's apropos of nothing, but I was just quite relieved. But what was the question you actually asked me?
I'm
So,
diagnosing, yeah.
oh yeah, so when I went into the hospital in 1990, I voluntarily checked myself in. I said
Right,
to
right, right.
I went to a local GP. I said, this is what I'm feeling. I don't want to do anything that I will regret. They put me into a hospital so that I could have respite. I mean, it was somebody looking after me. A lot of the people there thought I was one of the staff because compared to the other people there, I was so together. But I am very, very good at functioning. I function at a very high level, no matter what's going on, which is not always a good thing.
No, definitely not. But it was good. So that was a great still experience and interruption in your process. It didn't stop the shame and the depression at that point, but it was a good interruption for the suicide.
And it got me to, I mean, I did not attempt suicide. I want to make that clear.
Right.
But I was afraid of my own thinking. So
Uh,
that's what I was very, very afraid of what I was thinking. And I wanted to and I knew I've always had this feeling of hope. Hope has always kept me going. Hope that there was an answer, hope that there was a solution.
mhm.
Even when it was so excruciating, I wanted to curl up in a corner and just rock backwards and forwards. I remember being so terrified of letting go, like letting a tiny chink in my armor go, because it would be like that hole in the dam and I would just get flooded like a tsunami and I'd never be able to put myself together again.
Right.
But I did. I'm here, and my life now is amazing.
I want to discuss the when you finally were diagnosed, because by this time
Sure.
you've had like no alcohol for 23 years or no.
No, no, no. I got diagnosed at 35, so I got clean and sober around 31.
Okay.
So and then I stayed in, after I was 2 years clean and sober, I was in Tokyo. I got clean and sober in Tokyo, by the way.
Side
Um,
note. Okay.
Sober, sorry, sober. We just call it clean and sober, but it's
Right.
sober. I mean,
Right.
it's called clean and sober because you just don't take anything that's not prescribed by a doctor.
Correct. Correct.
So I'll say sobriety, but to me, sobriety covers anything,
Anything. Right.
right? So,
Okay.
so I'll call it so sobriety. I also believe in solvency, which is because if you have issues with alcohol, you'll likely have issues with other substances. If you have issues with that, you'll likely have issues with sex. If you have issues with that, you may it may show up in gambling, it may show up in money, it'll show up in relationships, because it's all destructive behavior designed to, yeah, it's you can be across many platforms.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate.
No, isn't that great?
So at 31, I got sober. And
Got it.
then after 2 years of sobriety, I moved back to New Zealand, which was too soon. But a relationship had ended, and I decided it was time to go home. In my mind, I thought I'd better go home at 33 because otherwise I'll be too old to start a career. I started my business at 48, by the way. And
Right.
then, but the depression didn't go away. And I knew I wasn't taking anything other than, I was eating healthily, I was exercising, I was
Right.
doing all the right things. And the depression still, as Winston Churchill calls it, was my black dog. So a GP diagnosed with depression, but it didn't cut it. And then finally I was diagnosed as bipolar.
Okay.
And that's when things started making sense. I will let you know, though, it wasn't a quick fix. I had to play what I call chemistry set for multiple years, which is when because doctors only know what you tell them. And I had white knuckled it for so long that I was not in the habit of asking for help. If I'd given, you have to give constant feedback and keep trying different medications, keep letting them know about symptoms, keep trying something else. Not every medication works, not every combination works, you will have side effects, they take a while to kick in, not everything is right for you.
Right.
Persevere. I've had friends that know people that have gone off medication because they felt it wasn't working.
Right.
Please keep trying to find the right. And I've had people in sobriety tell me that I shouldn't need medication. So It's a chemistry set. It's, you
Oh,
know,
I can't even imagine.
the combination I'm on right now seems to be working really well.
Okay. And it takes, so I have a son who's autistic, and when we explored medication possibilities, so in any situation, I think across the board, once you're open up the idea of medication, it's always a chemistry.
It's so much trial and error, and
Yeah.
I'm actually easier because I don't drink. And
Right.
I do eat healthy, and I keep my weight at a healthy level. I exercise, I walk in nature, I have spiritual practice, I have friends, I have a community, I have a stable relationship, and I still every single day have to be mindful. It's
Mhm.
a sobriety, bipolar. I mean, it doesn't go away. It's not something you can't just stop. It's never finished.
Right. It's an ongoing, and that's why I know in this podcast, I'm like, what are the things that helped you get through or still getting through? Because people who have anxiety don't necessarily get rid of their anxiety, but they have ways that they can manage it. I want to jump in and talk about those things, the things over time, those moments, the people, the places, the things that you did that made a significant difference. You've talked a couple times about diet, exercise, being outside, spiritual practices, having peer support. Um, what else can you add to that? Because you didn't, like you said, you didn't get diagnosed till 34, and your first thoughts of suicide were 13. So that's a 20-year period of time before you were getting clean.
It
And
wasn't fun. It wasn't fun.
no, so who, what, when, where, how were you getting through that at the time in the ways that were positive? What were the positive moments?
Well, self-medicating springs to mind.
Okay, that one's
In
tough.
fact, that was when I hit bottom, was that when you are really, 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 really drunk and you still are in excruciating pain. Basically,
Mm,
when the cure stops working. That's one of the great things about hitting bottom, is when you want to stop, and when you've hit the bottom that the cure isn't working. It stops working. So I was very, very lucky. I know many people who are still not sober,
yeah.
and they'll die. They'll die not sober. Anyways, to be specific, helpful, positive messaging. I never gave up. Hope.
Mm,
Hope was the one thing that kept me going, was hope, and aspirational. So find people who've got what you want and ask them how they did it. In peer recovery, you find somebody who's further ahead than you are and who
right,
has what
right.
you want. They have a life that you want. You ask them how they did it, and you do what they did. So, for example, I have a trainer, a physical trainer. I want what she's got. I ask her how she did it. She teaches me. I do what she tells me to do. I have a better chance of getting what she has. Same with healthy eating. Same with, find somebody who's got what you want. Ask them how. And also find people who love you unconditionally.
Mm,
I have very few people that I feel I could be 100% myself with and not scare them off, not have them reject me, not have them run away screaming. Um, I've got lots of amazing friends, lots of acquaintances. I love my clients. I accept when I'm with my clients, it's about them, and so it should be. But there's a handful of people that I know I can't scare off, if that makes sense, by being
yes,
100% honest. Because I
yes.
have stories that would make your hair curl.
Well, I mean, you can share any hair curling stories you want,
I will, but
but
not on camera.
yeah, right. So I love that. And then I know you moved to the US at 46, 31 you were sober, 35 were back in New Zealand, you were diagnosed, and you were playing the medicine game,
You
trying to,
forgot about 7 years on and off in Tokyo, a year in London, traveling backwards and forwards from the States. But you're right, I officially moved here in 2014.
right. So take us through from 31 to 35-ish when you got clean and got diagnosed to actually coming to the States. What did that start to look like, and how did things change for you? Because you're like a gypsy. You've been all over the world several times.
35 jobs, including an HMV DJ in Tokyo, which was a huge amount of fun, organizing techno parties, real estate agent, customs agent, animal welfare, copywriter, television production, actor, theatre, um, promotions, event management, stylist. So much fun.
Yeah.
My sister, her husband said to her, "Is there a job Erin hasn't had?" It's like, no, not really.
I mean, really, like you could make suits for men, or I'm trying to think of something like off the wall that.
No, thank you. No, 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 no. Women-centric. It's always been women-centric. So, sorry, we've only got a few minutes, but you asked 31 to America.
Yeah, yeah.
So, got clean and sober, came back to New Zealand, several disastrous relationships,
Hmm.
diagnosed at
Always.
35, still a lot of chaos. But I met a beautiful human being around the age of 35 who I was with for 10 years. He was like a giant. He's an amazing guy. We're still really good friends. Um, Beautiful, beautiful man, 14 years younger than me. That gave me stability that I'd never had before. I was still chaotic. I still went up and down like a yo-yo, still had a lot of things to deal with. It wasn't the healthiest of relationships, but a beautiful human being, very, very grateful. That relationship naturally came to an end. And around as that was ending, an old friend who I knew and trusted and who had met when I was 18, and who had been the sweetest, kindest, most lovely 23-year-old tech nerd that you could ever imagine. And this is pre-Bill Gates, when being a nerd was not cool,
Hmm.
before Elon Musk, before Paul Allen, and our Apple founder, whose name's gone out of my head.
Audrey.
Thank you. Before all of that, so being a skinny tech nerd was not a big thing, and I was in such a self-destructive mode. We'd stayed friends, and I threw him his goodbye party when he went to America at 25 to work for IBM, then Microsoft,
Wow.
and now he's
Okay.
somewhere else. And we became friends again when this relationship ended, and it turned out he was divorced, and he was coming to the end of uh, he was a couple of years into that divorce and was getting to a stage where he was ready to be with somebody again. And he basically said, "You've always been my dream girl. Do you think it's the time for us?" And I
Wow.
was in a place where I was able to say yes and not sabotage myself, and walk forward towards what I knew would be the best relationship of my life. And we were engaged within 6 months. I mean, we had 30
Wow.
years of trust. 30 years. He
Right.
knows my family. I knew his family. We grew up in the same. I've had relationships with people all over the world. I've had that privilege. But having somebody who has the same cultural background as you is
Hmm.
very useful. We know the same TV shows. We know how parochial New Zealand is. We grew up on the North Shore together. There's a couple of years separating us, but we just, we can, he can make a reference and I'll get it.
Right.
uh, and he's a New Zealander too. So it's just, we're a team. It's just so easy. It took a while. I mean, he had things that he needed to work through. I had things I need to work through, but we just get better and better and better.
And that was 7 years ago.
We got married. We mucked around getting married because there was so much going on. His family visited, my family visited, his family visited again, my family visited again. There was going backwards and forwards from New Zealand. There was a lot going on. So 2014, we got married. 2015, it's now 2020. Yeah, you're
Hmm.
right. We're coming up on 7 years,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
it's been
like
like this.
I like the timeline. How crazy that that's the person that you married, that you grew up with. Isn't that
And
fantastic?
my first marriage. I didn't get married for the first time till 48.
Right. And never had kids. And that was never an issue for you?
I didn't want kids until I was 40, because with being bipolar and having such a chaotic background, I had no faith that I would be a good mother whatsoever.
Good
And
for you.
I was not going to do that to a child. It just wasn't. At 40, I'd been in a stable relationship for 5 years with a wonderful person. It seemed like that could be something where we could create a safe home for a child. And I found out I couldn't have kids.
Oh,
And that there was some grief around that, and I'm so grateful it didn't happen. Like I said, I have so many young people in my life that I love and I'm available for them. And my sister has been unbelievably generous. She had a baby around that time, and he's mine. He's totally and utterly mine. I mean, he's known me every moment of his life. He takes talking with me like this for granted. He's used to he's digital native, so whether I'm in person or I'm not in person, it makes no difference to him
right,
whatsoever. And he's
right.
coming up on 10, and he's mine just as
I
much as he's hers.
I love that. Not that that's something that's necessary. I just wondered what the process was behind you
Well,
not
that's what
having kids.
happened, and I'm
Yeah,
glad it worked out that way, or I wouldn't have been able to move to America as easily.
right.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to be with my husband now. We have an amazing life. I was able to start a business at 48. It worked out the way it should have done. I've got two goddaughters, I've got nieces, I've got nephews. I have, wonderful, wonderful young people in my life.
yeah. And you have two stepdaughters too, correct?
I have the privilege of that. Yes, I don't think they'd want to be called that because they're in their 30s, but
Yeah,
they
yeah. Well,
are
yeah,
Nigel's daughters. They welcomed me with open arms. They have been nothing but supportive of the relationship. They're beautiful, intelligent, talented, creative, smart, amazing women who who also went through some challenges, and they've
right.
come out of it as amazing human beings.
Now you moved here and you're married and things came full circle. You're healthy, you're sober, you have played the chemistry game, all of that's pretty dialed in. At what point did you look up and think, I want to connect it back to the happy wardrobe and your business? At what point did you realize, where was your aha moment and all of that? Because that was only a couple of years later.
Yeah, it was 2000. 2000, beginning of 2015, because we got married end of 2015, and then we back to New Zealand because of course it's opposite seasons. And it was those 3 days in Hawaii when it was raining before the sun came out, and I suddenly clicked that having 20, at that time it was only about 20 years or 19 years of 10,000 hours of facilitating, mentoring, being taught, sharing, looking for themes, looking for patterns, um, guiding, growing, helping people transform, being transformed through a series of a process.
Mhm.
There's a process you go through, plus my love of fashion, plus all my experiences. Remember I told you I was a realtor?
Yeah,
Well, I'd go into people's homes and know their story. I'd
right.
know their story straight away. And I thought back to that, and I thought, what if I combined people's beloved possessions, which they take for granted, they see every day, they don't even realize they've accumulated because nothing comes into your home that you haven't brought in, but you're not always aware. And if I
Hmm.
combine that with, plus I know a lot about distorted thinking around money. So I help my clients create spending plans as opposed to budgets. There's often some of my clients had deprivation. There was compulsive spending. There was spending, I often say to my clients, what are you really buying? So combining the self-development with the realtor, being a realtor, with my love of fashion, with every single, nothing's ever wasted. Everything added up, and I
Hmm.
bring all of that to the happy wardrobe.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So great. So you started the Happy Wardrobe, and that was basically a marriage of all of your experience, which so many of us end up doing. I mean, I did the same thing with my business. I thought it's not about what jobs I've had, but what skills did I learn? And
I've
then,
never,
yeah, when you look at that, you think, oh, I just created this whole job for myself based on my skills. Has nothing to do with your training or your job or your degrees necessarily. So I love that. So many women. And tell me how that evolved, the happy wardrobe. And then I want to finish off with success stories and how you found your own style too through all of this. Yeah.
So how it started was I'd often helped people create their ideal life vision. I'm all about vision. So I'd often help people find the themes and the patterns to identify their ideal business, their ideal life. So it wasn't far removed to find their ideal wardrobe. And there was a young friend of mine who was buried literally by a wardrobe full of clothes that her mother had given her, that had dumped on her because her mother's life had changed. She'd gone into a retirement home and she dumped all of her clothing on her daughter, and her daughter was drowning, and her daughter was sensitive and shy and an introvert and also bipolar actually, and she was buried. She was buried. So I sat down with her and we looked at things that she really genuinely loved because she couldn't face looking at her wardrobe. There was nothing of her in her wardrobe. We created her style statement, and then we decluttered, and we took out 3/4 of that wardrobe disappeared. We literally removed her mother from her home, except in beautiful mementos and happy memories. But and with that space, we could find the items that really represented her. And overnight, she went from dressing in multiple layers, clutching very, very large bags because that made her feel safe, to wearing what she loved. Last time I saw her, she was wearing a much more body conscious outfit because she's tiny. She was absolutely tiny, but she looked like a bag lady, and she just had a small bag. She didn't feel the need to have all that layers between her and the world. So, but it was a good year and a half later before I sat up in Hawaii and went, I could replicate that. I could replicate that. And then I started studying exactly how I created a wardrobe and broke that down into modules step by step, which is how I take people through the actual process to create a wardrobe, because it's a learned skill. You just don't wake up one morning and go, this goes with that and that's why. But you can learn, easy peasy. And I can teach you in a few days what would take you years to learn.
Right. I love it. So what's the easiest place for people to find you? I stalk you everywhere, and we'll have all of the links in the show notes. And
I guess if you just remember the happy wardrobe, because I'm pretty easy to find, or Erin Keam, I'm pretty easy to find on social media, thanks to some talented behind the scenes work by assistants. But the happy wardrobe, you'll find me, or just my name. And I do 30-minute discovery calls if you want to transform your style. That's, I do want somebody who is ready to transform their style. I'm happy to meet them to see if we connect, because and to see if they feel I'm the right person. But if you think you're ready to do that, please reach out.
And you're going to be blown away. Just let you know that right now. Thank you so much, Erin, for coming on and sharing your story.
This is the rawest and the realest I have been in a podcast interview ever, Jen. So that speaks to how much I trust you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining today. It's been a pleasure. You can find me at momof18.com and on social media platforms as Mom of 18. A huge thank you to NGBN TV for sponsoring this podcast episode.